All right, so we are, of course, focusing much of our content on what's happening at the ANC conference at Nasrec, but let's focus now on a different political party. A leaked memo from ActionSA seems to set fundraising targets for candidates who want to be considered for the National Assembly and provincial legislature. The party, founded by Herman Mashaba, says candidates should be able to raise 100,000 rand by the 1st of January 2024. And if they exceed the 250,000 rand mark, they will be exempted from this candidate fee once, or from a candidate fee once elected. Let's bring in the party's national chairperson, Michael Beaumont. Mr. Beaumont, thank you very much for joining us. So you can confirm this is correct information.
Look, absolutely. And I think let's just set one thing clear. A leaked memo creates this idea of some top secret document that got out there. This is a document that we openly communicated throughout the length and breadth of our structures. And I think we must be very clear to differentiate between parties that openly communicate how they fundraise versus parties that fundraise in US dollars or in furniture. And I think there's a big difference there.
I have no idea who you might be talking about. But here's the thing. Once you, in a way, tie money to positions, it's just a very thin line between paying for a position in a party, which then means you're looking at someone's bank balance or their ability to be connected and raise funds for you, rather than their credentials as people who can further the interests and the needs of the people you want to serve.
Certainly. So I think we've got to clarify a couple of things here. Firstly, there are going to be many criteria for how we choose an ActionSA candidate for Parliament or for provincial legislatures. Those criteria will include people's education, their experience, their community track record, their track record in our party, their values, and a whole variety of things like that, for which fundraising will be an element. This memo dealt with fundraising far ahead of time to give people time to meet that particular target. But there will be a variety of factors. And let's also be clear, in any candidate selection process, no candidate will ever achieve all of these criteria. You'll have a situation where they may achieve some and not others, and we have to balance that as a political party. But let's also be real about something else here, Sally, is that when people are standing to be members of parliament, they are claiming to have a constituency of supporters. And one of the ways we should test that is whether there are people who will financially support their candidature in an election.
But aren't you suggesting that their constituency needs to have enough money to give? We know that we live in a very poor country, and many constituencies will be very, very poor. Doesn't this lead to criticism that you're a party that's interested only in a rich vote?
Sure, and I understand that, but I think the point in South Africa is we don't have a constituency-based system. We don't have a system where a member of parliament is standing for a particular part of Johannesburg or Durban or Cape Town, for example. We have a list system. So there's nothing stopping any candidate raising money from any part of the country in the process of leading to their campaign.
But it's the premise of what you're suggesting means that someone needs to have contacts with people who can donate a fair amount of money. Yes, sure, you can come from a very poor family and you can have contacts in big business, say, but not everybody will. And the reality is that if someone comes from a poor background and doesn't have access to those sorts of networks, it's creating the impression that ActionSA is not interested in them. Is that true?
No, of course not. And I think that's why we say there's a range of criteria. So you can have a situation where a candidate might speak many languages and have good qualifications and have an excellent track record in community service, but doesn't meet the fundraising targets for exactly the reasons you've mentioned. And I think we'd be foolish as a political party to say that individual shouldn't be part of this process. I think it's also important to say that ActionSA has pioneered a bit candidate selection in this country, because we become the first party to really start engaging the public on their sentiments towards the candidates who stand in their communities. And I think these are all a variety of factors that we want to put into place when we choose our candidates.
Don't you risk someone who is a good fundraiser, has raised tons of money for the party, but you don't ultimately believe has the wherewithal to perhaps be a member of the National Assembly? Doesn't that create an expectation in that person that they have actually earned the right to be in that position?
Not at all. And it goes back to that range of requirements that we would have for a candidate going to the National Assembly. So you would need to have that track record in community service by way of example. I don't know how you could put someone forward to represent communities in Parliament if they don't have any track record in community service. You can't buy a seat in an ActionSA candidate selection process. People must be able to demonstrate they have the skills, the experience, and the know-how. and the track record in serving communities.
Don't you risk that same person that we're discussing, who's raised a lot of money, but perhaps the leadership of the party doesn't feel deserves, is a right fit, say, for a top position, then just withdrawing all the donations that they've got? I mean, doesn't this create another set of problems for the party?
No, I don't think so. I think donations made to the party are made to the party. I think anyone who is facilitating those donations is facilitating the donations, then that's separate. And if people want to pull out of the race, as people do, when they don't get their way at the end of the day, then they can pull out of the race, and that's perfectly acceptable to us. But the one thing we must come to terms with, Sally, is that running elections in this country is extraordinarily expensive. We have a situation where the parties that are represented in Parliament get more than R1 billion in state funding every single year from the taxpayers of South Africa. ActionSA is a new emerging political party breaking onto the scene, and we have to compete with these parties. So we have to undertake every measure we can to ensure our campaign gets to every single part of South Africa.
So we know that you're starting to make inroads in different parts of the country. This is obviously very much with the plan to make a big splash in the general elections in 2024. Talk to me a little bit more about that strategy.
Absolutely. So we are going to contest all 9 provinces in South Africa. We have set ourselves the target of becoming the second biggest political party in South Africa. We want to see ourselves leading a coalition alternative to the ANC in 2024, nationally and in a number of provinces. But as I indicated, this is why ability to put down a campaign in over 4,500 wards in South Africa becomes a hugely expensive and a hugely important exercise. ActionSA is not one of those small parties that's going to contest here and there in 2024. We're going to be everywhere.
So it's go big or go home. How have your members responded to this not leaked memo?
Certainly. I mean, it's a mixed reaction, as it always is. And when we put out a memo saying these are the requirements, there's always people who are uncomfortable about that because they feel that a particular requirement might be challenging for them, as there will be when we communicate all the other requirements. But at the end of the day, we have to put forward candidates that are going to serve the interests of South Africans and have constituencies that they can demonstrate to us.
ASA is on record that you wouldn't go into a coalition with the ANC. Is that position ever going to change?
No. We fundamentally believe that you cannot solve the problems in South Africa with the party that has created the problems.
And I'm sure you're keeping a bit of an eye on what's going on at the ANC conference. What are your thoughts at this time?
I am, but I'm the worst person to ask about this because I find it all quite obsessive. I think the reality is there's no result that's going to come out of Nasrec that is going to solve the problems in South Africa. I think when you watch what's going on in Nasrec, you're seeing what are some of the problems that have caused the situation we have in South Africa. And that's why we see our mandate as ActionSA to unseat the ANC, remove them from government, and to replace them with an alternative.
All right, thank you so much for chatting to us this afternoon. That, of course, is Michael Beaumont, ActionSA's national chairperson.